Now over to today's second and last keynote, and to the money behind it all, the enabler or the disabler. That's probably the truth of it. We've invited Johan Torgeby, who's President and CEO of SEB. Johan has 20 years of banking and financial services behind him. He joined SEB in 2009 and became CEO in 2017. And he'll address how a major bank tackles the issues and opportunities around sustainability. Johan, you're joining us from Stockholm. There you are. It could be either sunny or snowy in September, you never know. Over to you.
Thank you very much, and I'm very happy to be here today, but I'm sad I'm not joining you in person. So I have now been asked to spend 15 minutes on something which is very dear to our strategy around how to finance the sustainable transition. As a few comments, these are partly personal and partly SEB-like comments today. So just take it for what it is. If we go to the first page, we'll just state what I think many people know, which we call the super cycle in banking and finance with regards to green and sustainability. Here are three major data points that supports that view for the future. First, the EU have assessed that there's at least a 3,000 billion euro private funding gap up until 2027, and they've also specified as a desktop analysis where and in which industries the financing need and investment need is of particular importance. We can also see the private financial markets developing very, very quickly. So to your right, you can see 6 categorizations of different type of financings in the debt market, which last year amounted to almost $800 billion US. And these are the green bonds, the green loans, but now more fastly growing than green is sustainability linked, which opens up to link your financial covenants and the terms and conditions into any sustainability criteria which you find be relevant to your company or yourself. This year, the first 6 months, we are currently on track to double that size with the global volume of close to 1,600 billion. And these are purely private initiatives for companies to use banks and the financial markets to finance purposeful investments. Then you have the public sector as such. And I've just mentioned two numbers. Both the EU and the US have committed $3,000 billion plus in order for the Green Deal and for the transition to happen. And some of us, including SEB, have just been mandated by the European Union to issue these green bonds, and currently the program is about 800 billion euros. And then the private sector, of course, needs to work together to define a common standing. And here are just three. Most important for us in the banking industry is the recent initiative around principles for responsible banking, which means that the top 140 banks or so in the world, through the kind of orchestration of the UN, is sitting down and seeing how and what is the impact of the financial market in terms of accelerating greening of the planet, but also how much harm do one actually do if one continues to finance like we did yesterday. The next page is a very simplistic model of the opportunity where we have asked material economics. This is not an estimate, it's not a prognosis by SEB. But given these enormous numbers, I always find it very hard to relate to thousands of billions. We asked material economics to just put it down in a Swedish context up until 2025, what the financing requirements might look like by industry or topic to be financed. And is it an incumbent, or is it an entrepreneur, or is it an innovation that needs to happen? And we won't go through this in detail, but I think it's a very good testament to what banks and the financial markets needs to do and can do in order to facilitate an acceleration of greening. And this number ends up for SEB, according to Material Economics, to be 500 billion Swedish kronor. And just to put it in context, SEB's current loan portfolio to corporates is just north of 1,000 billion Swedish kronor. So this is a significant number over the next, 3.5 years. Next page, please. This is a very difficult area as it's subjective. We, of course, as a bank, sit in the middle of many things. We have our clients on one hand, we have our owners, we have the general public, we have the NGOs, activists, politicians. So this is a very simple kind of decision tree. And the point here is very much to use this internally in our work to say there are two ways we can positively contribute. And those two ways have 6 different strategies. The two ways, either you engage, you try to use your seat at the table, your opportunity to influence, your business capabilities to finance something new, better, faster, or you don't engage. You stop advising a client, you stop financing a do-harm activity, or you do not enter into certain business areas. And rather than pinpointing these two against each other, in my opinion, every company, every bank, every individual needs to consider these two when we want to participate in making a positive change. They both could, with the intention of leading to positive change, be very important. But they are not necessarily mutually exclusive. You can do, and I think we all have to, do both. So engaging with clients for SEB means very much that you can simply just finance, advise, take deposits. That's the 3 things we do for anything that is kind of green. Anything that has a net impact which is positive, and we don't need to argue about it. The other area, much more difficult to assess, is do less harm. Companies, industries, material developments, entrepreneurs with new innovations that want to change something, but they are not necessarily doing good today or tomorrow, but they certainly will do less bad, and they have a huge amount of investments required to perhaps change a energy generation facility. And the third way to engage is some clients, actually I would say most, you can't really put a stamp on them, green or brown. Most of us, most companies have both. We are both good and bad. Some things we do overconsume certain type of natural resources that we don't really pay for. That's a huge problem. And some things we do is purely designed in order to make a positive change. And this is another way then finance can engage, that you select the engagement with a particular client. You don't exclude the client per se, but you might have utility, an energy producer who has certain dependent on fossil, and you say, I don't want to be part of that financing. I won't support the maintenance capex or whatever that is, but I also see you have a massive wind park development. That's the engagement. And this is about use of proceeds. Very much the kind of sign of times in finance today that we start caring a lot more. What is the use of the proceeds that anyone receives from the financial markets? Disengage can also be the most appropriate way. And there are 3 ways. And this is for us very much the way that is considered when you don't have an opportunity to influence. You might be very far off the company's, call it strategic agenda. You're one out of very many. They might be in a remote place in the world. But in the past, you financed it because it made economic sense. But right now, you can't really contribute either positively or negatively because you're not around the table of influence. And 3 ways. You can stop doing certain type of business, not allow certain type of financings for projects or new clients to be joined. You can also see that companies do have a history of having something that is no longer desired. And there's 2 ways to exit. An orderly, where you take a responsibility that you make it over time, unless the company changed, or immediate, where you kind of sell the exposure or you shut down the client relationship immediately, which has a lot of problems to it. But in our opinion, all the conduct of an institution needs to be put into these 6 boxes in one shape or form when we put on the filter of greening the planet. The next page is then SEB. This is our thinking. So we would like to use the balance sheet. We have a balance sheet, total balance sheet of 3,000 billion, and really take anything that is of material nature in order to greening of the economy, or particularly do harm, or looking to the future, so we can transparently report these things. This is a huge ask currently, a lot of work with the taxonomy, is going on in EU right now, the Task Force for Financial Disclosure, Climate Disclosure, as well as the Principles for Responsible Banking and the Principles for Responsible Investments, all kind of working now very quickly in order to get some type of consistency around these three. The green is a very welcome, huge initiative from EU right now, and it's supposed to be landing in what's called the GAR ratio for banks. And we need to have a financial disclosure in 2022, where we have a preset of terms in order to define what is the green asset ratio, what proportion of the lending or of the financial engagement a bank has goes into what the EU has defined as Paris aligned or desirable. You can imagine not an easy discussion going on right now, how to define these things. But regardless, we call that the green measure. This is a measure of seeing who is doing good. And you can compare that between. And the interesting part will not be the first number, but the change of this number going forward. The static is less interesting, in my opinion, is more going to give you where everyone starts, which has more to do on where are you on the planet, which country are you exposed to, because the national energy strategies are so widely different around the world. But we also want to do our own measure, which is the brown. This is not the green, it's the opposite. It's the proportion of the balance sheet that goes into particularly damaging areas in order to see that you live up to your ambition to reduce the type of engagement you have in the brown. And there's two ways to reduce it. Help the companies to transform into less brown, or reduce the exposure to those companies who have it. And the third one, which is by far to me the most interesting, it's the forward-looking, which is, no one is really talking about this as of yet, but we call it the future. So the green, the brown, and the future, where we classify all major credit exposure, all major clients, into a color scheme, which I will go through soon. And this is about not where you are today that is important, but are you in a transition? Are you in a gradual change only with lack of conviction around how to get to the end goal? Or are you already close to being Paris aligned or deemed to be sustainable? And you make a ratio of how much of your business or your clients really that you have chosen to engage with is part in this transition. And I'll give a quick example on the following two slides. This is not as easy as it perhaps sounds, but this is our internal model, work in progress, but this is what we're doing right now. So we take every single client and we put them into this little matrix. On the x-axis is the industry, and on the y-axis is the company specific in itself. So this is just an example. Let's assume this is an average automotive company. And let's assume that the variable we use here is tailpipe CO2 or tailpipe emission. So the industry is somewhere between significant negative impact and some. And this particular automotive company, Company A, is right in the middle of the scale. A 100% renewable automotive company, like a Tesla, would be up in the green. So they would be in an industry which has negative impact, but that particular company doesn't have any tailpipe CO2, tailpipe emission, as they are 100% electric. And there will be some automotive companies in the brown. They have a huge dependence on the combustion engine. The clients of theirs might want it, and they don't have a good alternative in the short run. Next page, please. You then take Company A and look at their plan. And this is a subjective assessment that you then need to do on every single client. What does this client say, and how believable is it to us, and how credible? It's just like credit analysis, but rather than assessing the probability of not being able to repay the loan, we assess the probability of the plan in order to change to something more positive. And here is just, over time up to 2050, you then plot in the company and the analyst's assessment of this particular company. And then here you can decide if you want to bank or engage in this journey. And this, I think, is a quite interesting company. They are in a problematic spot to begin with, but they clearly seem to have very low ambitions, very high ambitions, and brave statements in order to quickly come into the yellow transition and reduce the tailpipe emission, and hopefully by 100% before 2050. Just an example. And next page, please. It's just to say, as a final remark, that the polarization that I often meet around this topic, I think is unproductive. I think we're in it together. I think we all want to make sure that the planet and the world is behaving in a sustainable way for our and the next generation. I think we need to be daring and share what we are doing and not doing, rather than feeling very stressed around looking bad. So transparency, measurable targets, and high integrity around what you produce and say about yourself, the opposite from greenwashing. There is, of course, educational, and people need to mobilize their own organizations. So communication with everybody, internal, external, is of clear great importance. And as we are in it together, there's no one who can do this themselves, so we need to collaborate. And with those few words, I say thank you for your attention.
Thank you very much, Johan. Are you able to stay and take one question, Johan?
Absolutely.
The floor is yours. Anyone? I see a question at the back.
Hi, Johan. This is Victor Hadenberg from AMBA BGA. Just one question. When you mentioned the classification of, say, the car company, you have like the standard car company you're looking at in terms of classification, and then you have like a Tesla. But is it not unfair to classify Tesla as completely green when considering that, the batteries, that's a very dirty process, the minerals, we're thinking about all the other extra pollutants. How does that factor into the classification process?
Yeah, it's a good point, and that's why I really wanted to stress that it was measured on the variable tailpipe emission. Because if you go into the supply chain, the battery, it might come out on the other end. You might need some precious metals or some rare metals or minerals. You might have supply chain damage, which is not going to be classified as green for battery. So you're absolutely right. The world is complex, so this was just the taxonomy that has come out on tailpipe, that is just measuring the number of CO2 or NOx that is coming out from the tailpipe. But you're absolutely right. It will be completely different if you look at it from the supply chain perspective. And now we are just focusing quite a lot right now on environment and CO2, but there's very little focus on the industries that I'm pretty sure will come. And that's going to be the fashion industry, the real estate industry, etc. Because right now it's a lot about the supply chain, the production of, and very little about the demand side, the consumption of. So we all want more energy, but we're not shutting down all the petrol stations in Sweden. But we're certainly focusing on the production of oil and gas a lot. But they are different sides of the same coin.
Johan, thank you so much for joining us from Stockholm. We hope to see you in London soon. And I know for a fact that any unanswered question, Anders and his team from SEB will be here for the drinks receptions to do attack the SEB team. Thank you very much, Johan.
Thank you.